All right, next day, aftermath of washing, everything's dried off. It's sat overnight, and I gotta say, it looks pretty darn good. There's an area down here I couldn't get very well. What I have to do is get this bolt out over here for the battery cables. I'm gonna take that off, get the battery cable all the way out, and just start scrubbing that down. It's still pretty oily back here along the frame. It's just hard to reach, and I got to get in there and see what I can do about that. It's mainly just elbow grease at this point. And then later, I'm still on the fence about taking the carb off and everything. It looks pretty good. I could get in there with some carb cleaner and just kind of scrub it down, maybe with a toothbrush or something. But I don't know that I really need to take it all the way off. It would help. I just don't want to mess with all these connections here. It's not like it's really difficult, but everything is set so that everything runs right, everything's adjusted properly, and I don't really want to disturb that. But I don't know. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. This plate is really neat. So the controls from the dash come right here, connect to this plate, and then there's a lever. And I guess what it does is it's a shorter throw up there than it is here, so it's a change in leverage for it. So it might be as simple as just unbolting. Looks like there's two big studs right here on the carb that should lift everything right up, and they might just linkages might just pull out right there. It might be that simple. Well, and the hose, of course, and then there's an electrical connection here, and I think that's just fuel shut off. So, yeah, it looks pretty good. I think, next step, get these cables off and start scrubbing them. Oh, and I got to clean the coils and everything too. They're still pretty nasty. These just need a gentle bath, a wipe down, then a gentle bath with some degreaser. And I've done that before with automotive coils even, and I've just soaked the things right in hot soapy water, scrub them up, let them dry off. Hit them with compressed air if I have to, and there's never been a problem with them. So, yeah, I guess I'll just start poking away. Oh, one thing I discovered after I cleaned all this off, I found this hose. So this is a coolant crossover hose. It looks like maybe from the pump to the thermostat. It's been resting against the oil fill, and this was all covered with oil. And the hose has swollen, and it feels... The material feels really soft right there, and I think it's from the oil. So a rubber that's compatible with coolant isn't always also compatible with oil. And I think that's what's going on here. We got incompatibility. This thing has been soaked with so much oil that it's damaged. This really needs to be replaced because I don't know what kind of pressure is under here, but I can feel the wall is really thin just from having oil soaked here. If that blows while you're running, that's some serious downtime. Could be a big mess too. So that's something I got to address in the future. But I thought that was interesting. The other hoses, they look pretty good. I don't see any issues with them. I think I'm just going to leave them alone. There is oil on this hose too, where it was running down from the valve cover sitting on the coil, and this was resting on the coil. But it feels pretty good, so it must be a different material. Okay, I guess I'll get started. Alrighty, I think I'm ready to begin reassembly. I've got the wiring harness cleaned up, and all I did was use some hot water with some Dawn dishwashing detergent in it. Just gently scrubbed it, wiped it down the best I could. I had electrical contact cleaner for these connections here, and then I sprayed them out. I sprayed them out with that, and then used compressed air to keep them clean, or to get them clean, rather. So I'm trying to remember how everything goes. I'm pretty sure everything was tucked up real tight against the block, and then the fan blade bracket was mounted right here. So my goal is to get that on, and then I got to get the starter put on, and then the control module on. And I think what I'll do is I'll just set the camera up and do a time lapse of that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, hopefully. I might have to go back and look at some of my old videos to see where the wiring harness was originally routed, but yeah, I should be able to get this done. And I'm gonna actually leave this open right here because I still have to inspect this coupling. I mean, it looks good from the outside, but I think I'd like to take it apart and take a closer look at it. But it'd be really, really, really nice to get this all put back together and then start getting the front end back on. I got the starter all cleaned up, ready to go. I actually did take it apart and clean out the insides and everything. It was pretty nasty, but it's, I think, good to go now. I haven't tested it or anything, but I'm sure it's fine. I didn't see any issues with it. And I got the module cleaned up and ready to go too. So this has got to go in first, and then this, and then the coils, and then I'll get the wiring harness in, and I guess that fan bracket too. So reassembly of the tractor took the better part of a month, maybe 6 weeks. So if the video looks kind of choppy and out of place from now on, that's why. I did spend a little bit of time looking at the prop shaft that runs from the engine to the pump right there, and I was trying to sort out a balance issue on it. I couldn't really find anything. All I found was that the shaft was not perfectly straight, and I had no way to try to bend it or anything like that. So I left well enough alone and just kind of put it back in. Another issue I ran into was repairing the wiring harness at the Ignitor box, which I have a separate video for that. So that was just kind of one minor repair. Otherwise, it went back together pretty well. When you put something like this back together, you just have to remember you want to keep sensitive things away from rotating components and hot components. So in this area here, the wiring harness is kind of a big deal. You want to make sure you zip tie it up out of the way and make sure it doesn't collide with anything, and it should be good to go at that point. All right, you know what they say, big parts equals big progress. I'm ready to put the muffler on. I got a couple new gaskets to put on there. Once the muffler's on, I can start putting the front end back together. So the muffler was weld repaired here and here, and then I used some black paint to touch it up. And what I used is just this high heat paint for grills. It seems to work pretty well. I think it likes to cure hot, so what you do is just paint your muffler or whatever, run the tractor for a while and heat cycle it, and then it should be a pretty hard finish. I've used it before and it works fairly well. Probably not as good as actual muffler paint, but it's okay. So I'm gonna get started here. Got some new gaskets. Looks pretty good. Just a couple more fasteners here. I'm going to go ahead and replace this fuel line. So it's 1/4 inch right here, and then it's 5/16 right here, all the way back to the tank. It's not clipped here. There is a little P-clip right here. I don't know that I have it oriented correctly, but I'll have to look into that. The line runs real tight against the frame up in this corner. It's clipped in one place right there, and then it just kind of floats along the frame and then goes back to the tank. What's weird is right here in the park brake mechanism, it kind of rides along that. I can't really get it on camera very well, but it rides right on top of this linkage through here, and I think that's kind of weird. I don't know why it's like that. It seems like it would rub through eventually, but this line is not in too bad a shape, but while the platform is off, I'm going to go ahead and change it. So I'm just going to pull it out, measure it, cut in a new piece, and then stick it in. Okay, got my 5/16 fuel line all cut to length and in place. I had to push it through in this direction. I couldn't push it through from the front to the back to get around this linkage here. Not a big deal. What I did, this is something I do quite a bit, is I shoved an earplug in each end so that when I shoved it through the dirty frame, I didn't get any dirt packed inside of the fuel line. Another pro tip is if you think there's something in the line, dirt, whatever, you can take an earplug just like this and cut it down to size to match or closely match the inner diameter of the hose, shove it right in there, and then hit it with a bunch of compressed air and blow that earplug all the way through your line, and that'll clean the line out pretty good. I do that quite a bit, and it works well. Next up, I got to get my 1/4 inch line from here to here. I'm waiting on a fuel filter though, so I might wait until that fuel filter comes in, and then I'll do that. So the excess fuel line I cut off, I'm going to use to replace this coolant hose right here. So when I looked up these hoses on John Deere's site, it was the same part number called out. So it's just another piece of fuel and oil hose that goes right there. So I don't know if this is like not the original hose or what's going on with it. It seems kind of weird, but I'm going to replace it and see how that goes. I got a piece that's quite a bit longer. What I'm going to do is try to route it so it doesn't touch this fill neck anymore. Okay, I got this all sorted out. So what I ended up doing is cutting the new piece about 2 inches longer than the old piece, and I was able to put a twist in it, clock it a bit, and then clamp it to the nipple over here. It's just off this fill neck. My gut feeling though is that this rubber's going to relax and end up touching it. That's okay. If it does, what I can do is make a spacer out of zip ties. Basically, I put a zip tie around here, and then have the zip tie loop around both of them, and then put a zip tie between them, cinch it tight, and it'll act as a spacer, and it'll basically clip it to this tube without allowing it to touch the tube. So we'll see what happens. On to the next task. All right, I'm ready to start the front end. I got the heat shield, that'll go on first. I pounded the dent out a little bit. It's quite a bit flatter, looks a little better. It's not perfect, that's okay. So I'll get this on first, and then I'll put the front support on. Got the coupler all inspected. I guess I'm not going to do anything with it, so now I'm going to install the radiator cooling fan and the shroud and all that stuff. I kept track of how the fan goes in. So these ribs only appear on one side of the blades, and they were facing the radiator, so that's how I'll put them in again. I don't think it really matters because the blades face the right direction no matter what, so. But I'll do it the way it came out. Got the belt and pulley back on. Spacer. Whew, there, got those all started. That was a little bit difficult. What I found I had to do was use one of the bolts as an alignment pin and get everything lined up from the fan, the spacer, the pulley, and all the threaded holes on the bearing. All right, got that all snugged in. Now we'll get the shroud bolted back on and then get the radiator back in place. All right, I got everything all snugged down, got hose clamps back on. Everything looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and reintroduce some coolant. All right, got everything hooked back up. Harness is on. I got the battery clamped in. It's been a while. It's been a long time since this thing's run, so I'm going to key it on and see what it does. There's some fuel in the fuel tank. Let's see if the fuel pump kicks on. It doesn't. Oh, you know what? We need to set the park brake. There we go. Let's try that now. There goes. There's fuel coming in here. Let's crank it. Cranks. It's wanting to run. Probably run a lot better if I didn't have this cap on here. Whoops, better correct that. All right, let's try that again. All right. Beautiful. You know, I would swear this shakes a lot less than it did when I started. All right. I don't think I'm going to touch the carburetor. I could play with it later, but I'll get the air cleaner back on. Then I'll start putting the hood on. Well, that wraps it up for this video. Thanks for watching. I do apologize if it was a little bit brutal. The next video will be a lot more interesting. I install a brand new hood on this tractor, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Again, thanks. See ya.